Laker, your host. And this week I'll be joined by a great friend of mine and colleague called Tom Dehnel. Tom is an exceptional SEO guy who started in the agency world and then over the last couple of years has really found incredible success as an independent consultant with inside Chameleon Collective. Uh, he is also a very friendly, amicable guy who loves to engage with others, both in the community, online, in places like LinkedIn, and also through YouTube videos and other ways that he likes to express himself. And so I thought he would be a perfect guest to come in and share some of the experiences and tips that he's learned about being an independent consultant and what it takes to break through and find your path there. And given that this is just such a relevant topic today, as so many people are rethinking, what their career should look like. Do they want to double down on their traditional corporate careers? Do they want to create portfolio careers where they're saying, look, I want to do part of my time in consulting. I want to do part of my time, maybe practicing some creative craft that they're passionate about, or maybe they just want to spend more time with their family. But whatever those paths are, people are thinking about ways of trying to do life on their own terms. And I think Tom is someone that has done that extremely well. And not only has he done that well for himself in terms of his own career, but he's also done it with some really, really top tier brands. I've seen him work with multiple Andreessen Horowitz portfolio companies. If you follow the venture capital world, he's worked for giant software and technology firms like Okta or financial services firms like Goldman Sachs, even to very cool and well-known consumer fashion brands like Francesca's. So Tom's been around the block, but he's also learned a lot of tricks, both good and bad, along the way. And he's going to join me today where we share some new tips for new potential consultants. And with that, here we go with another week of O Ship. Hey, Tom, welcome to O Ship.
Freddie, hello, my friends. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I know it's early in your neck of the woods, so I appreciate you doing a morning show with us. Hey, before we dive in to tips today, it would be great just to ask you if you could just talk a little bit about maybe what you were doing earlier in your career and like when you made the jump over to being an independent consultant, and just giving a little bit of context to the audience today.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So I that's an important part of the story to share because the one major thing that drives me is that I really love helping people get free, and by that I mean free from like full-time employment. So I knew I wanted to be in marketing from a pretty young age. So I went to school for marketing, got a degree in marketing, got a job in a big New York City ad agency, and for the next 15 years or so, I bounced around from sort of agency job to internal marketing job. And I never really kept any of those positions for more than like a year and a half. It wasn't that I got fired a lot, although I did a couple of times. It was just that I continually just thought that like the next job or the next company would be the one that had like the culture or the organization or the coworkers that would like help me feel like, cool, I'm actually in the right place. So it actually took me about 15 years of banging my head against the wall until I realized, through the help of someone kind of waking me up to the fact that I could probably never be totally happy working for somebody else, and that I could actually take all the skills and stuff that I learned over the last decade and a half and put that into play as an independent consultant. So that's how I got to where I am now.
Worth noting, and I don't mind saying it live on camera. I think you're one of, if not the best SEO guy I've ever worked with. So I don't know if SEO guy fits as a proper job title, but a kind of SEO specialist or expert. And so I've seen how you're able to bring this value to clients, and when you get into a client situation, you're obviously going to be really successful. But I think what I want to focus on today is let's go back, and if you could think about all the lessons you've learned along the way. If you go back in time and you wish you knew some things that you could share with other folks, or maybe things you tried one way and then figured out the right way to do it later, just some great tips that are going to help people be successful. So I guess, where would you like to start with that?
I think so there's one tip that comes to mind that's like absolutely crucial, like my number one biggest tip that I would give to anybody who's thinking about going into business for themselves. But because this is a streaming show and we want to get those engagement numbers up, I'm gonna save that to the end. Um, to start, maybe let's talk about. So here's a common mistake that I see a lot of folks make when they're thinking about not just becoming a consultant, but starting a business of any type. I think people fuss way too much about like the, branding and having a logo and what's my, company name going to be. And, I need to set up a custom email domain and get a Slack account. And, I need an LLC or an S Corp. And I need to hire an accountant. Like, don't worry about any of that stuff when you're just starting out. I think people approach consulting or going into business for themselves as like from a position naturally of inadequacy, right? We've for our whole careers or our whole lives, we've seen like companies with these established brands and presences and stuff like that. And so we think in order to play in that realm, we need all that stuff. But what people don't realize is companies create those things to solve problems, not just for the sake of it, right? It's not like an admission ticket to being a business that you need a fancy logo and a custom Slack account or a custom email. I still use just my Gmail, honestly, for a lot of different stuff. And I definitely don't have a logo. And I created an S Corp out of necessity after I'd been earning money on the side for a year, and my accountant was like, "Hey, you probably need to make an S Corp. Like, let's get you incorporated." Like, I did it after I had started making money, not before. I will say one exception that I can think of to this is like your contracts. I do think that it's helpful to have a really solid MSA that protects you. And also to make your MSA as like a master
services agreement. Yeah.
It's like an overarching contract for your relationship with a client. And then you have something like an SOW or a schedule or a scope of work that says, hey, here's what we're actually going to work on. Make sure that's super explicit. Like, don't just be excited for your first client and be like, yeah, whatever, we'll figure it out. Like there may come a time later on in the engagement when they're like, hey, why aren't you doing this? It's helpful to be able to come back and say, well, because we didn't agree on doing that in the future. So I would say that's one area that it helps to be really buttoned up early on.
You mentioned a second ago, like not getting too fussed about your website or whatever. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, for the record. I would argue that today, especially for freelancers and consultants, before they even start thinking about potential like marketplace sites and so on, that your LinkedIn is like your biggest website. Like that's almost like a universal presence for a lot of people. You talk to people, a lot of times people are looking you up on LinkedIn and just using that to kind of check out your professional creds. Have you found that that's something that people are able to find a lot of discovery for you on?
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's actually kind of in the spirit of the first tip that I gave, which is like, don't fuss on stuff that's going to take a whole bunch of time just to like get something that you think is valuable. Something like optimizing your LinkedIn profile for search, like doing SEO on your own LinkedIn, is actually super easy, super low lift, and can actually pay really big dividends. I still get, more and more every month, probably I get people reaching out to me cold on LinkedIn saying, hey, I need SEO help. Are you available? And the key there is, and this is kind of where my experience in the SEO, search engine optimization world has really come in handy. It's that when I think about my LinkedIn profile here, I'm not using the sort of pseudo professional language that people often think they have to use, right? You see a lot of this, like, I developed growth strategies for integrated channel marketing programs with, international stakeholders. Like, what the hell does that even mean? First of all, and secondly, like, no one's searching for that, like no one who needs help right now is looking for that. So, you might pick something like, Google Ads consultant, or SEO
Mm,
consultant, or email
mm.
marketing consultant, or interim CMO.
Yeah, think about how other people are basically going to look for this stuff and
Mhm.
use those words. I mean, you don't have to be. I think putting this out there for other people. You don't have to be an SEO expert to have some good foundations about thinking what people are looking for, and then making sure you're there. And actually, let's use this as a tangent to give a pro tip from my experience. And obviously, I've now been a consultant for about 6.5 years. Obviously, I work in groups and I work independently as well. And so, one of the most important lessons I try and explain to people is this idea of really honing your offering. So, one of when I sometimes look at some potential new consultants that are out there in whatever method that they're working, that they basically try, because they've done a lot of stuff in a lot of cases. Sometimes people are 20, 30 years in their career, and they decide, I'm going to go out there and be a consultant, and they've done a ton of stuff, and then their profile and their bios or whatever, they read like Wikipedia. Yes, it is very comprehensive. Congratulations, you have done a lot of stuff. But I think what that does is it puts the burden on the client and says, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Client, you go read this Wikipedia article, and then you analyze that and you tell me what I'm an expert at. And let me be super clear. No one has time for that kind of stuff. Clients are reading through things really, really quickly. They're looking for first solutions. Everyone is extremely busy, especially the more senior that people get, and they want to find a solution first. So my advice to people is, when you have a specific expertise that you are trying to bring to market, even as an independent consultant, be think about it almost like a thesis statement. Your title is the thing which may be SEO optimized, like we were talking about a second ago. Maybe that thing that is very clearly defined. A growth marketing consultant, or a brand strategy consultant, or whatever it may be, or freelance brand strategist, be another great one as an example. And then your bio is the supporting. If this is like classic essay writing, the bio is like the intro text, and it should support that thesis statement, basically the job title. And then even the work examples you show. If someone look back at their history of their career, they could probably look at different jobs they had and say, look, if I may have done all these different things in those jobs, and let's say using LinkedIn as an example, but I'm only going to focus on the thing on each one of these sub jobs that supports this statement of this thing that I'm saying I'm an expert in. Because at the end of the day, in my experience, clients, where they hire people full time to be generalists. They want people that are flexible and they can do lots of different stuff. But when people hire consultants, which are typically and should be more expensive than internal employees, they are hiring specialists. They want people that have done this a bunch of times, and they're going, I'm paying a premium, but I know this person's a super specialist, and they're going to get through this task a lot faster. So my take for what it's worth. And Tom is a little frozen. 3 cheers in the classic spirit of Oh Ship. If we didn't have a complete video drop off or internet drop off or audio issue, this wouldn't be the Oh Ship show. So I actually have another one that I think is super relevant and super interesting. And this is kind of continuing down this idea of, when you have got your specialization, how do you go out there and try and kind of determine your value, your rate? And so, I was about to talk a little bit about, how I think people should try and set their introductory rate if they go out there and consult. But Tom, you're back. What's your take on this before I even get into my take on it? How do you think people are supposed to set their value or find their value?
Well, I think most people, when they think about value, they're thinking about money, like how much do I charge? And I would actually defer to you on that part of it, because you've been doing it for way long.
Yeah, I've got
Consultant,
definitely got a
consultant.
strong
But
point
I
of view
think
on that one.
I think I know you do. We've talked about it, but there's something else that I want to add here. philosophical value, or almost like value above and beyond the work that you're actually going to be doing. And I think and I hope that new consultants would use this as like almost like a pep talk for themselves. So think about your value in this way. Yes, you are ostensibly being hired to provide a service. In my case, people want an optimized website for organic search. But when I come in as an independent consultant, I'm actually providing a lot more value than just doing that one thing for them, right? So if they were to think about the alternatives to hiring a consultant, if they were to hire an agency, then they would get, probably some pretty well hashed out processes, but they're probably going to be connected with like a, junior sort of mid-career kind of, account manager type person who may not be an expert. And every time the client has a question, it's going to take like, let me get back to you on that. It's going to take like a week to like respond to your questions. And so, agencies can be kind of slow and obviously they've got a ton of overhead, so they could be expensive too. So compared to that, you've got some value. Think about it now in comparison to another alternative, which is the client could hire a full-time employee to do the thing that they're hiring you to do. And there's a ton of risk that goes along with that. What if they make a bad hire? And it's going to take, they can't, it's a lot harder to fire a full-time employee, right? So there's some value in thinking about your value in perspective of like the other alternatives that a client could use. Now, as a consultant, the client gets a ton of extra stuff, right? They get the flexibility to fire you whenever they want. Hopefully they don't do that too soon, but that's a real benefit to them. You should price that in. You as a consultant, you can customize your services, right? If the client asks for something a little bit different than the normal process at an agency, good luck. They just sort of have the things that they do. As a consultant, you can much more easily flex and be custom. You also can give like a really cool, like outside of like the corporate kind of machine perspective. You can be a real person, right? Clients ask me all the time, "What do you think about the new website design?" I can be like, frankly, I hate it. It looks old.
Because you're not worried about the politics, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Totally not. I don't have to participate in those politics if I don't want to. And lastly, I also have clients who have become friends. For that reason, I think, because I can be honest and they know they're getting the real me, and they get a friend to vent to, or to feel like they could take a break from sort of the being inside the company culture. So there's a lot of value in being a consultant, and people should keep that in mind when they're thinking about how to price things out.
Yeah. So I love this idea of like, understanding how a client might potentially look at, why you versus someone else. I think it's actually a great angle. And I wouldn't have thought of actually addressing some of those. So hats off to you on that. On a more, like, I'd say pedantic level, sometimes a lot of people just go, look, I want to start. I have no idea what I'm supposed to build. And so one of the recommendations I typically make to people is, look at, if you were in a traditional job today, look at whatever your comp package looks like, reverse engineer that back to basically an hourly rate. And then whenever that hourly rate is, double it. And I always tell people that should be your starting consulting rate. And the key word there being starting, but I'll touch more on that in a second. The other side of this is you then kind of go to yourself, look, as a consultant, especially a new consultant, there's going to be ups and downs to how you're doing. You're going to have you're going to have periods where you're busy, where you're not busy, and you need to allow for that flex, because you may not be engaged all the time. And this gives you some breathing room, because that if you are making, kind of billing 15, 20 hours a week, you should be in a spot where you're kind of paying all your bills and not going to be freaking out, that you're in a good place, in a comparable place to where you were before. And then if you are fortunate enough to be an extremely popular and successful consultant, you would then have the ability to actually make considerably more money than you would in your traditional job, which is where this really starts getting interesting. But there's that risk that comes along with that. And you'll notice the keywords I said was the starting rate. I think whenever you start doing this, you have the opportunity, because you're your own boss, to keep increasing rates to meet the market demand. But this is, I think, a nice, healthy place to be where you shouldn't totally freak anyone out unless you are really overpaid at your old job anyway.
Yeah, I agree with all that. There's almost like yeah, you do have to start somewhere, and I see what you mean. But I like how your somewhere is like double the hourly rate of your of your normal
But I
like
mean, in the beginning, most people don't get the like. I think the luck of just kind of going in and be like, boom, I'm at 100 billable hours a week every week. So it happens. I've seen it certainly happen to quite a few people, but I don't think, everyone needs to set realistic expectations that there can be these big peaks and valleys. And so I think, that's part of it. And look, even if you're a W-2 employee, yeah, they may be paying you every single hour, but let's be honest, like, not everyone is in let's just call a classic 40-hour week. There's a lot of other random stuff that's going in there. It's not even like those 40 hours are fully billable. So I got a question for you. Um, how do you deal with clients when they approach you and they're like, they want, like, this is a common thing I've seen come up a lot, when they want spec work, when they're like trying to get you to do stuff for them to earn their business. What's your take on it?
Well, I had a mentor give me some advice once, which was not to give something for nothing,
Hmm.
and crucially, what that means is don't 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 take that to mean like don't ever just give anything for no money. Um, what it means is if you're going to make a concession like that,
Hmm.
make sure it's really clear what the value is to
Hmm.
you. So I personally would probably not do spec work unless there was a really clear agreement between me and the person I was doing the work for. By the way, if you don't know what spec work is, it's like free work that you do to sort of like show that you've got the chops.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't do it unless there was a really clear arrangement. Like, yes, I'll take a look at this for you, but you've got to make an introduction to three of your these three people who you're connected with on LinkedIn, and I've done the
Hmm.
research, found three good prospects that I might want to talk to on
Hmm.
LinkedIn.
Hmm.
Um, that I use that advice all the time when it comes to contract negotiation too. Look, not most clients. I'm fortunate to be introduced to them by referrals or friends, and there's very little sort of back and forth and negotiation when it comes to setting up an SOW. But sometimes it happens, and look, life is messy, and people have different preferences and needs, and so I'm okay to be flexible with my offering. But if someone does need me to flex, and so they need me to give them something, then I'm going to do it for something in return. Let's say for example, the client says, look, we really can't pay that much for a for project work. It just doesn't fit in my monthly budget. Okay, maybe we split that 10K job into two 5K months or something. We bill it monthly, or two 6K months, right? Something like that. Or maybe you pay the first 5K up front, right? There's always some flexibility, and I think when new consultants enter this world, it's natural to come into this thing from a scarcity mindset, right? You don't have much business, you don't have much pipeline, you don't have much experience, you're focused on everything you don't have. But keep in mind, the person who's thinking about hiring you, there's something they don't have either, and that's you, or
Yeah,
or
I
the skills that you have as well. So you are allowed to push back, and in fact, I find that instead of that creating a situation where the client's like mad at you because you push back, it's more like it starts the relationship from a place of equity. We're
yeah.
both giving and taking, and we're both coming. We're hopefully both getting something out of
Yeah,
this. So
I'm actually completely opposite on this. I'm super passionate about spec work. In fact, I just I'm building a house right now, and I have agreed with my architect and my builders they're going to build a quarter of the house, and if I don't like it, then I'm just not going to use them, and I'll just knock it down and get another build. No, I'm just kidding. This is a stupid idea. I hate spec work. It is terrible. Like there's no one out there is like, hey, when you paint part of my house or like do part of the surgery, and then I'll tell you how I'm feeling about it in professional services. So don't let clients make you do this. The only exception, I think you touched on it earlier, is if you are a new consultant and you are making a leap into a new, this is the key word, in a new category or a new area of specialization that you have no credibility in, respectfully, or very little credibility in. If jumping over into that area gives you a portfolio piece that you can talk about publicly, being the key word, then it might be worth it.
Mm.
I've seen some people make career jumps, and I'll use like a good example, like maybe someone who's come in from like the agency world and they want to do like interim, and use my world as an example. They're an agency person that maybe wants to make a jump over to being like an interim marketing leader, and they're struggling to get away from like the agency perception that maybe some people have of them. Maybe you do like some work like in this new role at a discount or something like that, because it allows you to say, hey, I've done this kind of work. It's kind of like the classic, like you're only as good as your portfolio kind of example. But unless it's that, no one should be giving away, free work, in my opinion. I do want to go back to this pricing thing, and when we're talking about free work and pricing one more time, and getting busy. This is a really hard thing, because I think a lot of times I give advice on people that are already successful consultants, how to become more successful. But today I really want to focus on new consultants. And one of the biggest things I've seen have happen is, we talked a second ago about like how to set rates. And I feel like when new people come in and they set their rate, sometimes they, especially if they're quite senior, and they see they're looking at their peers and they're seeing the rates that other people are around them, and they're going, well, so and so gets this, and that person over there gets this, and they feel that there is on the same level as that person, and they've just started getting out there. And I've seen people kind of be very fussy about their rates in the beginning. And for whatever reason, maybe it's not even about their rate, maybe it's just something else. But they don't pick up some of these initial jobs with clients that they want, and it messes with their mojo. It psychs them out. And I've seen people, some of the most impressive people I've ever seen, like they get psyched out. They get psyched out, and then they basically start to fail, because basically clients, they can smell that like lack of confidence on people, I actually believe. And so really big pro tip for me is get busy. You know what I mean? Like when you get out there in the very, very beginning, it's not always about the rate. The most important thing people could do is get over that 20-hour threshold I talked about earlier. Get busy, get the cash flowing. Because if especially if you're making the jump for the first time from corporate or a more traditional job, that predictability of cash flow will keep you like, yeah, everything's fine, pay my bills, wife or husband's happy, everything's good, and I can keep doing this. But if you get too fussy about it in the beginning, you can kind of wig out a little bit, and you don't want that. You could always raise your rates later, but number one, get that cash flow going, and that way you're not burning down your runway or whatever. You can get fussy later. Get the business cranking. Like any business, even if it's a business of one, it's not all about the high level margins at the beginning. It's like you want to get to break even first, and then kind of worry about everything else from there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that feeling of abundance, like I have enough, um,
Big time.
is like the genesis of all good decisions. I think. I mean, there's a lot to be said for being down to the felt, and just hustling to try to get by. I've been in those situations in my life too, but man, I tell you what, if you've got 30 grand in the bank, you can make a lot better decisions about like
Yeah.
the kind of clients you want to take on, or what have you. And the same is true as if you've got a good book of business too. Even if it's maybe not your ideal client or your ideal situation, if you've got some money coming in, the bills are paid. Now you can kind of,
Desperation, the air of desperation is never a good look.
right, exactly,
And
yeah.
I think a lot of times, especially when people are paying a premium for folks, they want to sense that you're this confident person that they're investing in is going to get it done. And I think when people get panicked, that's never good.
That's right. And actually, on that note, so something related to that I wanted to talk about is investing in your space, right? So you
Mm,
kind of look around in my office. I've got some art that I like. I've got some bourbon that I like. I've got some my skis there. I sort of did this like fancy wood panel thing here. Like
yeah.
I feel I've actually got, if you can look around, if you can see around, I've got like custom lighting. I can change the
Hmm.
color throughout the day and
Hmm.
stuff. I've got pictures of my idols up in front of me on the wall here.
Hmm.
A picture of a big fish that I caught. I mean, I feel comfortable, right? I feel really good in this space, and so every day when I wake up, I go for my run. I have some breakfast. I come into this space. I feel like I have this, I'm sitting in a place of abundance. And a lot of people
Yeah.
might say, oh, that sounds kind of woo woo or whatever. I say,
No
screw
way.
you.
I'm with
I
you.
feel really, really good in here. And I think if you can approach your workday like that, now look, I have to disclaimer that and say, look, not everybody has the ability to do that, especially
Understood.
right
Agreed.
when they're starting out. But if you can do whatever you can do to kind of make your space as comfortable as you can to start, it
Mhm.
doesn't need to cost a lot of money. I think
Could,
that's a
could,
really
could,
good
could be the
position.
dining room table, but even then, try and have the lights on, create it the right way, create whatever space you can for yourself. And I think, and then putting my kind of commercial entrepreneur hat on, there's another side to it. A lot of it has to do with presentation. A second ago, I talked about projecting confidence, and I think when you're able to get on the call and you project this sense of like put together and there's professionalism that comes along with that, or frankly maybe it's not even professional, and like your space is part of your brand in today's world. This intimacy that we all have now as we kind of enter each other's homes is super important to I think projecting who you are and what you stand for, and what kind of experience they're going to have when they work with you. So yeah, I think that's great. That's great call. I mean, again, a lot of people working in coffee shops. So clients don't always really want to deal with that. There's baggage that comes along with that. So if you can, even if you are someone who's working at a coffee shop, maybe part of your space, or even let's call it your experience, isn't even just the room you're
Mhm.
in. Could be your quality of your video. Could be the quality of your audio. If you work in noisy places, use things like I'm a big fan of something called Crisp, KRISP.ai, and it's an amazing like noise canceling system that makes your audio sound a lot better. Things like that, I think, would argue as maybe even like sitting in the periphery of that space you create for yourself, the technology that you use.
Totally, totally. It's funny. In my second agency job, I was at BBDO in New York, and I had this actually great manager, Lynn Firth, and she actually she was talking to me once, and she was trying to help me in my career, and she made the comment that perception is reality. And I
Mm,
remember at the time I was still sort of like angry young man, just come out of college, and I was like, no, reality is reality,
mhm,
and
mhm.
and the fact is, that might be the case for some people who sort of are aware of that of that truth. But the fact is, the vast majority of people that you work with, they have so many things going on. They're just trying to get through their day. Most likely the conversation they're having with you is like they're just trying to check a box, like, yep, we're doing SEO this week. That's the case a lot of time. And so anything we can do to kind of make their experience better, make it
Mhm.
easier, make it less sort of weird, they don't want to be talking to someone who's like in a weirdly lit room that looks like they're in
Mhm.
like a witness protection program, and like their voice is all scrambled. Like there's things that anybody can control, even if they don't have a lot of money, to try to give a good client experience right off the bat.
Mhm.
I was actually curious to sort of switch gears a little bit about your start, Freddie. So, like when you think about like making a switch from like being in the maybe agency world or in-house marketing world to coming over and being an independent consultant, like that can almost feel like you're standing at the bottom of a Mount Everest, and you can't even see the top. Like, how do you even get there? Like, what do you think is a good tip for like helping somebody to just get started and make
Yeah.
that first step?
So I look. I think a lot of people see me as a pretty confident guy, and but I can tell you, I'm just like everyone else in the sense that when I made the jump, I was scared, and I had come through a situation where I'd kind of had a senior C-suite level role in a firm in New York where I was very unhappy. I had taken another CMO role for another firm that I liked. Fair enough, it was cool tech and nice people, but I just had this moment. I woke up where I just wasn't feeling it. I don't know how else to say that. I just wasn't feeling it. I just thought to myself, like, I don't know how I'm gonna, you know, I just didn't see myself doing this for more years on end. Um, I'd gotten to a place where I was like, I knew I didn't want to start another company. I knew I didn't want to, I didn't want to move back to New York. I kind of wanted to, as I frequently joked, I wanted to make New York money without living in New York. Um, and, um, and I basically impulsively quit my job. I was like, screw it, I'm going to be a consultant. I made up my mind at 4 p.m. on a Thursday, and I quit my job at like 4 p.m. on a Friday. And then I remember, which is not what I'm recommending to anyone watching this show on a side note. And I remember at around 10 p.m. that night, I had this moment where I was like sitting, just my wife had like fallen asleep, and I was watching this TV on the sofa, and all of a sudden I was like, what have I done? I was like, how am I going to find clients? Oh my god! And I got on LinkedIn. I think I stayed up to like 3 in the morning or something crazy, and I was just piling through LinkedIn trying to figure out like anyone I'd ever worked with that I thought understood what I did and respected my specific skill set, and that might potentially be someone good that I could work with. And I just started building a list of people, and I went out there and I started reaching out to those folks, and I was lucky enough to be able to build my clients list that way. But I have a tip that, again, when we said at the beginning of the show, I said, hey, what are the things we did back then that
Mm.
some maybe they worked, they didn't work, and what would we do now if we could go back in time? And so I have a really, really cool tip that I could give anyone out there that's considering making the jump over to consulting at this point. So if you've never been an independent consultant before, you've never been a freelancer or anything like that, and you are thinking about doing this, you can only do this tip I'm about to give you before you kind of come out of the consulting closet or a freelancer closet or whatever you want to call it. So go out there, think about yourself as a startup product. You are the product, okay? So if you were founding a company and you were the product, you were launching a product or service, the thing you'd want to do is market validation, right? You wouldn't theoretically go build a product that you hadn't market validated. Not that I haven't done that in the past and regretted it later, but that's a whole nother conversation. But you would go out there like a sane person, and you would really validate the product before rolling it out. So now let's pretend you're that product. So go out there and build that list I talked about earlier. Look at your LinkedIn, just write it there, think back through your career, whatever it may be, and write down all the people that you think understand who you are. They respect what you do. They like you, even though you don't have to be best friends, but you know that they would probably be interested in working with you again, and you'd certainly be interested in working with them again. Now, some of these folks you may not have spoken to in 10 years, and that's okay. And the reason why this market validation idea is particularly good is because it's actually a great way to reconnect with people that you've disconnected with. And so, disconnected, that's the right word, fallen out of contact with. And sometimes, by the way, a lot of people say, I find it really awkward to reach out to people I haven't spoken to in a really long time. This is a really authentic way to reconnect with people, that doesn't feel weird or slimy or whatever. So you write this list down, and this is what I should have done in hindsight, by the way. And then you go out to those folks and you send them a note, and it says something like, hi, whatever your name is, I haven't connected with you in a number of years. I've been thinking about all the people in my career that I've worked with that I respected and admired, and I think understood my value and what the kind of work that I did, and who I respect, and would value your opinion. And I know we haven't caught up in a while, but it would mean the world to me if you find 20 minutes to catch up with me. I'm considering a major life career change. And it would mean the world to me if you could just listen to it and tell me if this is a good or a bad idea, because I feel like you know and understand me. First off, who does not want to get that note? That is a nice, thoughtful, kind note. It is polite. It is an authentic and meaningful way to reconnect with someone that shows a lot of respect for that other person. You get them on the phone, video call, whatever, you chat, and you obviously catch up, and then you pitch them this kind of idea. Say, I'm thinking about becoming an independent consultant that does X, Y, Z. Or do you think I should further my career in the traditional corporate world or whatever? And I think coming through the exercise, you're going to get one of three things are going to happen. Option one, they're going to go, wow, I never actually thought that you would be an independent or freelancing. Like, I loved you. I would love to, I see all these big companies you worked at. Like, I would love to work with you again. Boom, you just got your potentially your first client. Option two, I don't do anything like this, but I really want to help you because I think you would be great at this. I met someone the other day who, funny enough, was saying they needed someone like this. Would you like me to introduce you? Two, you just got your first or second client. Or option three, they go, Tom, I think you're great. Really smart guy, but just kind of feel like the corporate environment is like more your thing. Like I think you're really great at navigating the nuances of company politics, and like you just such you just really seem to have a way in this kind of structure. Like I think you should, and you've got such great momentum. I think you should stick to it. And right or wrong, this is market validation. And I've given this advice to a whole bunch of people over the years. And 9 out of 10 people actually, because they wanted to be consultants, actually found their first clients this way. And 1 out of 10 people found out that they probably shouldn't be consultants and probably saved themselves a lot of pain and embarrassment from going out there and potentially doing this and then failing or having to walk it back. So that would be like my super pro tip. And I hope, sorry for the long story, but I just think it's a really 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 solid bit of advice that I've seen executed really well a number of times now, to help people get started.
Yeah, I could actually even add to that, and maybe, I mean, that's an amazing tip, and a lot of people wouldn't even think to do that. And I would just enhance it maybe even further by saying, take yourself really seriously during that
Mm,
process. It's
mm,
the same. I have a friend, Jason, whose dad's a dentist, and his dad's constantly telling him, Jason, when you go to the doctor or a dentist or any healthcare professional, be your own advocate. Really stick up for yourself and ask hard questions. Don't just take a quick sort of response and have them sort of hurry you out of the office. I think the
mm,
same applies to when you're trying to validate a product. I've been through that process, and what can happen a lot of the time is folks will be like, they don't want to offend you, and so they'll say, "Great, sounds like a really good idea. I think you should really do this." That can be really good feedback, or it could be really bad feedback. It just depends on
mm,
kind of
mm,
how they're thinking about it. So don't be afraid to push back and say, "Great, I'm glad you're excited about it. How would you price this kind of service?" Or what do you think
mm,
it's worth? Right? Really ask
mm,
some clarifying questions there to
mm.
make
I
sure that
love
you're
that.
getting like the kind of the real stuff, right? And not just not just your friend doesn't want to
Mm,
offend you. I
mm.
think that's super critical.
Um, great add-on. So, Tom, I want to be conscious of time today. This is an awesome episode. I think there's some really valuable tips in here for any consultant, frankly, new and even more established people. I'm gonna final question. What is the number one thing that you think you've learned after doing this for a number of years now that helps you to be a super successful consultant?
Yep, I said I would share that one, so thanks for
Oh, good. Yeah,
holding me
that's a good point.
accountable
You did
to
have
it.
a big build up to that, didn't you?
Yeah.
I
The
hope I hope it didn't blow it for you.
No, it's perfect timing actually. So the number one principle that I think independent consultants need to have if they're going to be successful at this is integrity. And I don't mean this from like a preachy, holier than thou perspective. All I mean is like do what you say you're going to do, and when you screw something up, like own it and try to make it right. We're all humans, and we're even a subset of humans called marketing consultants. And so of course, we're not perfect. We all make mistakes. But try your best, and the little things really matter here when you're talking about integrity. An example you see all the time is someone says, "Hey, yeah, I'll get that proposal to you on Wednesday," and then it's Thursday afternoon and still no proposal, and you're kind of left wondering, well, where is it? Should I follow up? Am I bothering this person? Maybe they had an emergency or something came up, right? The simple act of not sending the proposal on Wednesday has created this like cascade of doubt about you, frankly. And if I work with somebody and they say they'll get me something on Wednesday, it's totally fine if they get it to me on Thursday, as long as they tell me on Wednesday, hey, not going to be able to get this thing to you, I have until Thursday. Yeah, usually, yeah, no problem at all, right? But it's about just the communication and the integrity. Do
Yeah,
what you say you will do, and that I think is the reason that I've gotten so many referrals from satisfied clients. It's not that I'm an absolute genius and I know everything about SEO. I'm always learning, but I try to give clients a good experience working with me, and it's the simple act of doing the things you say you will do. In my opinion, has really helped me to do that.
This makes me think about. I was rewatching this thing from Simon Sinek the other day about performance versus trust. It was kind of talking about how, like in SEAL Team 6 or whatever, how they were looking at like how they value a team member, and there was this kind of trust meter that went one direction and this performance meter that went this way. And they said, look, when we have team members where we're low on trust, even if they're the highest performing people, we would actually rather have someone that was like maybe not quite as high performing, but super high on trust, because those are the ultimate team members. Those are the reliability, and I would argue that this integrity and doing what you're saying you do, that's trust, right? That builds trust, and those are the people. I mean, just speaking personally, that's who I surround myself with. Those are the people that I always go to. I so frequently talk about how I like people with heart more than the other thing, but in the day, it's because I trust them, and I think people with integrity are. I mean, that's it. That's the jam right there. So I think that's great advice. It seems straightforward, but this needs to be core. Everyone is a brand, and as a independent or freelancer in any way, you are your own brand. Your integrity is a extension of your reputation. So I would say as a final comment and final thoughts. I've said this expression on Oship before, but I'm going to say it again today. One of the bits of advice my father gave me that really always stuck with me. You had some sayings that were quite well known and famous over the years, but this one was just something he said to me in private. And he said, "Your reputation is the only thing in life that you can't be taken away from you. You can only give it away." He goes, if you don't do things to let people take your reputation away, it can't be taken away. But your actions and the things you do, you can give it away, and you need to be super super careful with that. And it certainly has impacted me lifelong. And I think I really feel echoes of that and what you just talked about, Tom, in terms of the value of integrity. So I'm going to use this as a great place to end for the day. I thoroughly enjoyed that episode, Tom. It was great to talk through all this. It's clearly something you and I are both really passionate about. I hope our audience today, whether you're watching live across LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, any of the platforms we love to stream on, or you are listening through our new audio podcasts on any of the major podcasting platforms out there, we really thank you for tuning in. Please continue to support the show. We love that you're showing up every week. Tell your friends, give us a like, share it on your social feeds. Whatever it takes. We appreciate all those little bits of effort that really helping the OSHIP show continue to grow. Tom, any key places you want people to look out for you?
Yeah, professionally, I'm just all in on LinkedIn. So I will say, like, one of the things that really drives me is helping people get free of full time employment. And if you've watched this and you have questions and you want someone to talk to about it, I am crazy busy, but I will always make time for somebody who wants to explore that as an option. So yeah, but find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. It'd be great to connect.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Well, great to have you on. Thanks again for everyone tuning in, and we'll see you next week on OSHIP.